guys. I feel like I talk in front of people all day, but those people are all 10-year-olds. So this is a little bit different. But anyways, I'll start with my life before Christ, kind of. I grew up in the church. A lot of you guys know I'm a preacher's daughter. My dad is Pastor Larry. So I feel like I've spent a lot of my life in the church, like any, spare time. My parents are working up at the church. I, play at the church, play hide and go seek at the church, bring my Barbies up to church, lots of time at church. Anyways, and so I can't remember a time in my life when I haven't known God, or been able to talk to God or prayed. I just feel like that's always been a part of my life. I can't remember a time when I haven't done that. So I don't have like a big dramatic transformation from not knowing God to believing in God. I feel like I've always believed in God. My story, I guess, is more of like a realization of the freedom that I have in God, and the freedom that comes from giving my whole life to God. So like I said, I grew up believing God. I never really struggled with not believing. And I've always loved going to church. I've always loved coming to youth group and coming to Sunday school. I've always wanted to go whenever my parents were like, no, you're sick, you can't go. Like, no, please, I want to go to church. Or if we get back from vacation late, my parents were like, well, my dad would be like, I'm not preaching tomorrow, we're not going to church. And I'd be like, well, I still want to go to Sunday school. So I've always really liked going to church. But the same about being a preacher's kid, it kind of has its challenges sometimes. Sometimes I would kind of feel like, everybody knew who I was or was looking at me, and it made me kind of self-conscious, knowing that everybody in the church knew who I was, and knew stuff about me, maybe when I didn't even know them. And on top of that, I'm really shy. At least I was. I could be really shy and quiet. And so those things combined, it just made me really kind of self-conscious around a lot of people, and it made it really hard for me to kind of open up to people in the church and in my life, and it made it kind of hard for me to make friends. And sometimes I kind of felt like people would treat me differently, or maybe not want to open up to me because they're like, well, she's the preacher's kid. I can't say certain things around her. I can't act a certain way around her. And so I don't know. For me, it was just, I was self-conscious, and people sometimes acted different around me, or maybe I just thought they were, I don't know. But it made it kind of hard for me to make friends. So when I did make friends, I didn't have a lot, but the friends that I had were my really close, good friends. So anyways, one friend that I had was Caitlin. I think I have a picture, my first picture. There's me and Caitlin. We became best friends. Well, we were in kindergarten together, but we didn't become best friends until first grade. And then we had we were in first grade and second grade and fourth grade, and then all our junior high classes were together. So she was my best friend, and we were super adorable. And whenever my family moved from Edmond to Ada, we were sad because we were going to be separated. But then, coincidentally, Caitlin's family moved to Ada a year later. So even though I moved, her family moved. So we still get to be in all our classes together and be best friends, and it was awesome. So anyways, we were best friends, and then in 8th grade, my family found out that we were moving here to Broken Arrow. And so Caitlin and I were really sad because I'd be moving away from her and all my other, my few other good friends in Ada. And so I moved here the summer before 9th grade, which is a difficult year to move going into 9th grade because I went to South, and it's a whole lot bigger school than I was used to in Ada, Oklahoma, graduating class of 200. And so I walked into South that first day, and there's kids making out under the stairs, and I was like, oh, this school looks huge and terrifying. Yes, it was big and scary, and I didn't know anybody, and I was a complete, dork. I walked around South with a map, and I didn't know where any classes were, and I didn't have anybody to sit with at lunch, and it was just, it was awful. It was scary. It was really hard getting used to life in Broken Arrow after I had left all my friends in 8th grade in Ada. Let's see. Anyways, so when I moved here, it was hard, and like I said, I was really shy, and I had a hard time relating to people and opening up to people and making friends. And moving in 9th grade made it even harder. So I didn't make that many friends in 9th grade. And I had friends at church and at school, but I didn't have any best friends, like I did in Ada. Nobody that I would nobody that didn't already have another best friend. So it was, not that great. But I didn't want people here to think that I didn't like it here. I was self-conscious that I didn't want them to think that I was, sad or upset, so I just, pretended like, yeah, I like it here, it's good, and acted happy when I was still feeling kind of like lonely and sad. Anyways, and so Caitlin and I, we talked on the phone, we wrote letters, she'd come and visit me in the summer, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so junior year, back in 05, I got a call from Caitlin, and she had this horrible story that she was telling me about her mom being kidnapped by her mom's weird ex-boyfriend, this guy Jerry that I'd met when I lived in Ada. And he had kidnapped her mom, and they found him, and they found the mom, and she was fine, and Jerry got put in jail. But it was this, it had really freaked Caitlin out and freaked her whole family out. Her mom was kind of, went to visit a relative and was kind of staying away, and Caitlin was all, kind of freaked out. So she came to stay with my family for the weekend up in Broken Arrow. And so, even though that was kind of crazy that her mom had been kidnapped and this awful thing had happened, I was glad that she got to come visit. We got to hang out, watch all our favorite movies, eat all our favorite foods, do all our favorite best friend stuff that we never get to do. And then she came to church with me on Sunday, and then she went home back to Ada. Well, a couple weeks later, I was in the Pride, and I was playing in the bandstands at a football game. And as I'm walking back to the band room, my mom comes up to me, which is really awkward. She's like, Mom, I'm walking with people, and I'm just walking. Started talking to me. But anyway, she tells me that Caitlin has been kidnapped. I was like, what? I'm like, yeah, Caitlin has been kidnapped by the same guy that kidnapped her mom 2 weeks ago. He had got out of jail on bail, and he had kidnapped Caitlin somehow. He had kidnapped her from a school, and nobody knew how it happened exactly. They just know she'd been kidnapped from the school, and there was an Amber Alert out, and it was crazy. I didn't think that would happen. I didn't see that coming. And I was just mad and scared, and I was hoping that they'd find her. And the next day, I still went to, practice for Pride, and I was really shy and quiet at this time, but that day at Pride, I was, I talked to more people than I'd ever talked to at school in my life, because I was asking everybody, pray for my friend, she's been kidnapped, there's an Amber Alert, this sketchy guy, we don't know where she is. So I was telling everybody to, pray that my friend Caitlin be found. So I get out of practice, and my parents are there waiting for me, both of them, which is weird because I drove. And they tell me that they found her and that she'd been killed. He had killed her and then killed himself. And, I was devastated. I was just, in shock, and I was upset, and I was angry, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, and I just wanted to shut myself in my room and never come out, and it was awful. And it was kind of a weird feeling to have, I feel but I didn't want anybody to comfort me. I didn't want anybody to tell me oh, it'll be okay, she's in heaven. I didn't want that. I just wanted to be angry, and I wanted to hold on to the hate that I had, and I didn't want anybody to tell me any differently. And so I kind of just went through the motions, went to the funeral, said, okay, yes, she had a good life, she, had a good testimony, she led a lot of people to God in her life and in her death, she influenced all the lives, I knew that, but I still didn't want to give up my anger and my hate. And so I kind of became more closed off, and kind of put on a face of being happy, okay, everything's fine, but inside I kind of hardened myself a little bit more, because I didn't want to share that feeling with anybody else. It was too special to me, that memory, and I didn't want to let anybody in on it, I guess. So I kept pretending that everything was fine, but I hardened my heart, and I told God, I was I understand that Caitlin, influenced a lot of people, and that she's in heaven, and I get all that, but I was I'm still allowed to hate the guy who killed her because, he died, he's probably already in hell, and I'm gonna hate him, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's what I told God, and that's what I believed for a long time, that I was allowed to hate this person. And so, I went on kind of feeling that way for a year or so. And then we move on to the next portion where I met Christ. Dayspring, of course. So this was the summer I was at Dayspring. And we were doing this activity with these tiles or something. There were these like chip tiles, and we were supposed to write the name of somebody we were supposed to forgive on a tile and then like stick it to a big cross with grout. And it was this really cool big cross, and once everybody was done, it was going to be this cool like mosaic cross thing with all these names on it. Anyways, so I felt like at Dayspring that year that God was telling me to write his name, the murderer's name on this tile, Jerry's name. And I was like, you can't take my hate away from me. That's something that's mine. I get to hate him because he took my best friend. But I don't know. I finally wrote it on the tile and put it on the cross and, kind of started to forgive and let go. And it was like really painful because, once you like harden your heart and you decide that you're not giving it up, when you finally do kind of decide to forgive, it hurt really bad. But I did it, and forgiveness is not something you can just do once. That was like the first step. So after that, I prayed every night that I would forgive him over and over and over until slowly, I started to melt a little bit, and I started to forgive, and I started to open up to people a little bit more and started to kind of care less what other people thought about me and care less about putting on a happy face and kind of just be more myself. Let's see. I could feel myself caring less what people thought about me. And it was a very freeing feeling. So as I started forgiving and started kind of letting God tell me what to do, I started to feel more free and more happy and more myself, which moves me to the life after Christ portion, which is kind of like my senior year. And then when I went off to college, I was opening up more and more, and it was moving faster and faster. It was really awesome, and I finally started to make more like friends, like really good friends that I felt like I could talk to and laugh with, which is my next picture. There's my friends from college. Me and John were roommates in college. She was one of my first really good friends, and that's our friend Kelsey. And I felt like God put them in my life to show me that I could still have best friends, that I could still have that like really good friendship where I could, talk to them and laugh with them and, hang out with them all the time. And it was really awesome. And it was kind of weird. I felt like I was a completely different person when I went to college. And it wasn't because I was acting different. It's because like God was showing me who I really am. So it was being myself, but I was being like more myself than I had ever been, I felt like. And the more I listened to God, the more freedom I felt to be who he created me to be. And I just realized that all my life I had been closed off and I'd been shy and I'd been self-conscious. And God made me free, and he showed me who I really am. And he showed me not to care what other people think, but to listen to him. And then when I do that, I'll feel freedom. So sharing my story with others, when I was in college, I was given the opportunity to lead small groups and Bible studies. And I got to be the intern here at church one summer. And I got to share my story with lots of other people and lots of girls in my sorority. And even through all that, I learned more and more about what God had in store for me. So my verse is, it's Colossians 1:13-14. And it says, "For he has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son, who purchased our freedom and forgave us our sins." So I feel like, God died on the cross so that we could have freedom. So that's something we should embrace and take advantage of. Because when you listen to God and listen to what he wants in your life, it gives you freedom, and it's awesome. So that's all.